Welcome to level 68. Over the next few levels, we'll do a grammar deep dive and a guided revision. You've come this far, you can handle it.
This was a sample lesson from Tun Online Armenian School. If you're interested in learning Eastern or Western Armenian, you can sign up and start learning for free today at tunup.com.
This level may feel a little bit like reading the rules to a game. There's lots to remember, but with practice, they'll become second nature. We'll introduce the concepts, and then you can practice them in your practice exercises afterwards. Let's go. By now, I'm sure you're very used to and comfortable with the suffix ner, and we know that we use this when we want to express a plural, but the word that preceded it had more than one syllable. On the other hand, is used when the word only has one syllable, like in the example of shun dogs. One syllable, shun, and so we use to make the word plural, dogs. Now, this may surprise you, but there are some irregular plurals in Armenian as well, and these occur only in some instances. Let's have a look at ik, the suffix, and ik in Eastern Armenian or ig in Western Armenian. The first example we'll show you is woman, kin in Eastern Armenian or gin in Western Armenian. If we want to say women, we say kanaik in Eastern Armenian or ganaik in Western Armenian. Take a few moments and see if you can pronounce this in your dialect. Now, before you get irritated that Armenian has this variance on plurals, consider that the same happens in English as well. We have a lot of words that use the plural s on the end, for example, dogs, houses, shoes, socks, and so on in English. But we also have plurals like woman, women, person, people, and so on, where the plural form is not just the letter s on the end of the singular. The same happens in Armenian. It doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen, and so it's important to teach you so that you can become comfortable with this variation. Kin or gin for woman, kanaik or ganaik for women. Another example is the plural form of Mrs. or Madam. In Armenian, we say tikin in Eastern Armenian or digin in Western Armenian. If we wanted to say sir, we would say paron in Eastern Armenian or baron in Western Armenian. Sirs, the plural, paronaik in Eastern Armenian or baronaik in Western Armenian. Can you say this in your dialect? And if we wanted to say man or person, the word is mart in Eastern Armenian or mart in Western Armenian. The plural of men or people, martik in Eastern Armenian, martig in Western Armenian. Now, I know that we've learned that this ik suffix can mean that we're referring to something small or cute. And so context is very important here. Martik, mardig, men or people, plural. They may be cute, but it would depend on the context and the sentence. So in most cases, we'll use the suffix ner as the plural when the word has more than one syllable, and as the plural when the word has only one syllable. Just like in English, most commonly we use the suffix s on the end. Shoes, socks, dogs, houses. But occasionally you will hear and see this ik or ig suffix, and now you'll know exactly what they mean. Plurals are also treated a little differently in Armenian when we're using compound nouns. Let's take a look at what this means. A compound noun is two or more words that come together to form a noun. Steamboat, textbook, Christmas tree. These words, steam and boat, have meanings on their own rights as individual words. Same with text and book or Christmas and tree. But when we bring them together in Armenian, the plurals are perhaps not as you would expect. The rule in this instance is if the second word in the compound noun has a single syllable, we use the suffix to make the word plural. This is a little counterintuitive, but we'll show you some examples. In this case, we'll be looking at the second word in the compound noun. We'll translate them into Armenian first, and if that second word in Armenian only has one syllable, we'll be using er as a suffix, if we want to make the word plural, steamboats, textbooks, or Christmas trees. The word for steamboat in Armenian, or in Eastern Armenian I should say, is shokenav. In Western Armenian, shogenav. Now, I realize here that you'll need to understand which means steam and which means boat. In this case, nav means boat, the second word in the compound noun. And so because of that, nav being one syllable, shokenaver, we use er as the plural form. Shokenaver, Eastern Armenian, shogenaver, Western Armenian. I'll explain this again in case I lost you on the first try. Our instinct looking at this word, shokenav or shogenav, would be to realize that there are more than one syllable, and so we would want to put ner on the end of the word to make it plural. Shokenav ner or shogenav ner. However, because this is a compound noun, or in other words, a noun or a word made up of two individual words, steam and boat, we take the second word, nav, meaning boat, we see that it only has one syllable, nav, and so we use the suffix er to make the word plural. Shokenaver, shogenaver. Steamboats. Another way to describe this might be to realize that if we were just talking about boats, we would say naver in both Eastern and Western Armenian. And it's almost as if the Armenian grammar wants to de-emphasize the fact that we're using this adjective, a steamboat in this instance rather than a motorboat. And that's the reason that we don't change the way we express the plural of nav, naver. If I've confused you, just remember the rule. The second word in the compound noun, in this case boat or nav, if it has a single syllable, nav, or shun, or girk or kirk, for example, single syllable, the plural form will simply be er. Shokenaver, shogenaver. Let's look at another example. Textbook. Dasa girk in Eastern Armenian, tasa kirk in Western Armenian. We know now that the way you say book in Armenian is girk or kirk, and so we know that this is the second part of that compound noun. Girk meaning book, kirk meaning book. Single syllable, and so the plural form of textbooks is dasa girker or tasa kirker in Western Armenian. If you look at the example on screen, you'll see that this follows the same structure as steamboats. It is a book, in this instance a textbook. Book on its own, if we wanted to express a plural form, would be girker or kirker. And so the fact that it's a textbook doesn't change that ruling. Dasa girker, tasa kirker. Let's take a look at Christmas tree as our final example. Tonat zar or donat zar. In Armenian, the word for tree is tsar or tsar. In this example, as in our others, tsar or tsar has a single syllable, and so the plural of Christmas trees is tonat zarer or donat zarer. Er on the end because tree is a single syllable. Okay, time to throw another curly one at you. Plurals after numbers. The rule in this case is that when the noun is placed after a number, we won't make the word plural at all. Let's take a look at what this means in practice. If we wanted to translate the words in English for dogs into Armenian, we would assume that the way to do this would be chor shuner. Chors meaning for, shuner meaning dogs. But actually, this isn't correct. When your noun, in this case the dog or the shun, follows a number, we drop the plural form in Armenian altogether. The correct way of saying this is actually chor shun. For dog is its direct translation. And we'll do this every time we're using numbers or counting the amount of something. 8 days, for example, ut for 8 or for day, not ut 8 orer days. That would be grammatically incorrect in Armenian. If you recognize the word ut meaning 8, that's good. But by now you should also recognize the word or, meaning day. We learned this in barior in Eastern Armenian, or parior, meaning good day. Okay, so recap of that one. When referring to quantities, don't make the word plural. This rule extends to when we're talking about how many pieces of something. In this case, we're asking a question, not using a number at all, but we're still talking quantities. And so in this case, we would say kani kator in Eastern Armenian or kani kador in Western Armenian. Kani meaning how many, kator or kador meaning pieces. But because we're talking about quantities, we drop the plural entirely. It doesn't matter that there's not a number here, or that it's a question. Quantities and numbers in Armenian are not expressed in a plural form. However, there is one exception. And luckily these are video lessons, so if you need to, you can replay them more than once. If and only if we were describing a quantity using many or few, then we can add or ner to make it plural. But it's optional. Let's take a look. Many people, shatmart in Eastern Armenian, shatmart in Western Armenian. And we know this could also mean many men. The plural, if we chose to add the suffix, though it's not mandatory, would be shatmarter or shadmader. Many people. The same as if we were talking about a few people, kichmarter or kichmarder. The first pronunciation in Eastern Armenian, the second in Western Armenian. You can use the suffix or not. Both are grammatically correct where you are talking about quantities and you are saying it's many or few of something. In all other instances, drop the plural, we won't use it. There are also some ancient plural forms that we haven't looked at together, and one example of this is the suffix k. We teach you this because you may come across this suffix when you're listening or reading in Armenian, but your use of it is entirely optional. An example of this is a Yerevan native we know would be called Yerevansi, the tsi meaning but they belonging to that place. If we wanted the plural of this, we could either say Yerevansik, the ancient suffix, ending in that K sound, or we could say Yerevansiner. Yerevan natives, or people from Yerevan, plural. Let's take a look at one more grammar rule for today, possessive articles. We've learnt already that shunnis means my dog, shunnet, your dog, and shunnun, his or her dog. How, though, might we express the plurals? My dogs, your dogs, or his or her dogs? The answer is that we carry over this possessive article suffix, in this case shuners, my dogs, or shunert, your dogs. Let's break this word down. Shun meaning dog, in both instances meaning dog plural or dogs, and the suffix s at the end to indicate that it's my dog, or t at the end to indicate that it's your dog. And in this case, both in the plural and the singular form, my dog, my dogs, your dogs, and so on, we will use either a possessive adjective or a possessive article, not both. What this means in practice is that we wouldn't be saying ko shunut, your dog, because in this case the literal translation is ko, your, shun, dog, ut, your dog, your, and so that wouldn't be correct. Instead, we would say shunut, meaning your dog, or ko shunne, you're the dog. Either are correct. We use either the possessive adjective, like ko, at the beginning, or im, meaning my, and so on, or we use the possessive article, the t suffix in this instance at the end. Shunnet, your dog, ko shunne, your dog, but not both. Ko shunnet would be incorrect, your dog, your. And before we go, we'll show you one other little thing in formal speech that you may not have known before. In Eastern Armenian, the way to say you is du. Du is the way to say you in a formal setting. Ko is the way we say your, zer is the way we say your in a formal setting, and kez is the way we say to you or tzez to you in a formal setting. And so you know when you walk into a shop or a restaurant in Armenia and you're greeted barev tzes, you know that this means hello to you in a formal or a very respectful manner. There's been a lot to take in today. Watch this video lesson again if you need to, as many times as you need to, and don't forget your practice exercises, because this is where you get to really solidify your learning and test yourself before we move into our next few levels of grammar review. Have an amazing day, and we'll see you in the next one.